The morning I found a business card wedged into my front door, I nearly tossed it without a second glance. It was printed on thick, cream-colored stock with embossed lettering, the kind of card meant to make you feel smaller before a single word is spoken. The name read, David Stone, attorney at law, retained by the Oak Creek Homeowners Association. On the back, written in clean blue ink, were 4 simple words. We need to talk. My name is Mark. I've lived on this land for 22 years. My father built the main house back in 1979, and when he passed, he left everything to me. The land, the outbuildings, the records, and a filing cabinet so meticulously organized it bordered on obsession. He used to say, a man who can't prove what he owns doesn't really own it. I always thought that was just something old men like to say. That business card proved otherwise. The trouble started the way most trouble does. Quietly. Oak Creek is a subdivision that went up about 8 years ago on land that used to belong to the Garrett family, old cattle folks who eventually sold out and moved west. The development was neat enough. Clean homes, trim lawns, a polished brick entrance with solar lights. But almost immediately, the HOA that came with it began looking beyond its own boundaries. Their president was a woman named Brenda. She treated every room like a courtroom, and every conversation like sworn testimony. She moved into Oak Creek 2 years after open, ran for HOA president within 6 months, and spent the next few years building what I can only describe as her own small empire of rules, notices, and sharply worded letters. The first time I heard from her was by mail, a formal notice, 3 pages long. It informed me that my property, specifically my workshop near the eastern tree line, was visible from Oak Creek's walking path and was, in her words, inconsistent with community aesthetic standards. She included photos taken from the path and a list of suggested fixes: repainting, installing a privacy screen, removing what she called unsightly equipment storage. I replied with a single paragraph. My property is not part of the Oak Creek HOA, has never been part of it, and is not subject to its standards, guidelines, or enforcement. I included my parcel number and wished her a good day. Brenda did not have a good day. Within a month, 3 more notices arrived, complaints about drainage, fence height, and exterior lighting affecting the neighborhood's ambience. Each one sounded more official than the last. Each one written as if the decision had already been made, that my land somehow fell under her authority, and all that remained was for me to accept it. I ignored them, the way you ignore background noise that hasn't become a real problem yet. That was probably my only mistake, because being ignored didn't stop Brenda. Brenda hired a lawyer. David Stone showed up on a Tuesday afternoon. I had seen his card that morning, and by the time I called his office, he was already pulling into my driveway in a silver sedan worth more than my tractor. He stepped out polished and composed, maybe around 50, carrying a leather portfolio and the quiet confidence of someone used to people making way for him. He introduced himself, thanked me for agreeing to meet, which I hadn't exactly done, and explained that the HOA had retained him to resolve what he called an ongoing compliance matter. Then he opened his portfolio and slid a document across the porch railing. It was a 12-page demand letter claiming that parts of my property fell within the original development boundaries recorded when Oak Creek was planned. According to the letter, my workshop violated setback rules and aesthetic provisions, and I had been uncooperative with what he described as good faith outreach. He said it pleasantly. That's what bothered me. He spoke like the outcome was already decided, and this conversation was just a formality. I asked him one question before he could go further. Did you pull the original survey for this parcel before drafting that letter? He said the HOA's documentation was thorough. That wasn't an answer. I told him to wait on the porch and went inside. I opened my father's filing cabinet. He had a system. Every document related to this land was arranged chronologically, labeled cross-reference, and sometimes duplicated in a second folder marked backup. There was the original 1979 deed, every parcel edition since, surveys from 1981, 1994, and 2007, easement records, utility filings, and one document I hadn't looked at in years. I remembered it clearly because my father had highlighted it in yellow and written one word in the margin. Important. It was a 1983 survey, commissioned when a developer first tried expanding into this area. That survey defined our property boundary with precision, documented setback lines, and, most importantly, established a buffer zone along our eastern edge, a buffer my father had negotiated, had recorded with the county, and had paid to have officially certified. That buffer zone meant that when Oak Creek was developed decades later, its plans had to respect our boundary. Had to, because our record existed first, which meant if their development map overlapped that buffer, the error wasn't on my land. It was in their paperwork. Not my workshop, not my fence, not my lights. Their map. I returned to the porch with the folder. I didn't hand it over all at once. I walked him through it the way my father would have. Deed first, then parcel additions, then the 1983 survey with the buffer clearly marked, then the county recording stamp showing the date. Finally, I placed Oak Creek's development map beside it. The one I had already pulled online the week Brenda first contacted me. Side by side, the difference was obvious. Their map assumed something about that eastern corridor that simply wasn't true. David Stone went quiet. He studied the documents, checked the dates, and read the buffer note twice. Then he asked if he could photograph everything. I said yes. I also handed him copies I had already made. He closed his portfolio without saying I was right. Lawyers rarely do, but said he needed to review everything with his client before taking further action. His tone had changed. It wasn't confident anymore. It was careful. He left. I stood on the porch, watching his car back down the driveway, thinking about my father, his filing cabinet, and that single word written in the margin, important. 3 days later, I got a call, not from David, but from a paralegal. She told me the HOA was pausing its compliance review pending internal assessment. That was the last official contact I ever received from Oak Creek. Brenda didn't call, didn't write, didn't send another notice. The walking path is still there along the eastern edge of the neighborhood. My workshop still stands exactly where it always has, visible, unchanged, exactly as it should be. I heard from a neighbor that the HOA board had discussed the boundary issue, that David Stone advised them not to pursue it further. That Brenda didn't take it well. But what I heard matters less than what I know. And what I know is this. My father spent 50 years treating paperwork like armor. Every survey, every filing, every recorded document was a layer of protection for land he loved. He never prepared for a specific fight. He just believed that clear records made it harder for anyone to push you around. He was right. People like Brenda look at something older than their authority and decide that if they can see it, they can control it. They hire lawyers, send official letters, and rely on legal language to make ordinary people feel like they've already lost. They count on you being overwhelmed, unprepared, tired enough to give in. What they don't count on is a filing cabinet. They don't count on decades of recorded proof. They don't count on survey stamps, county records, or the quiet work of someone who believed documentation mattered. They don't count on the land remembering. That Tuesday evening, I sat on the porch until the sun dropped behind the trees. My workshop cast a long shadow across the yard. The eastern fence stood exactly where it always had. And somewhere beyond that ridge, I imagined Brenda was making calls, searching for another angle, convincing herself this wasn't over. She was wrong. It was over before it began. She just didn't know the land had already answered her. Some people look at old property and see something they can reshape. What they're really looking at is a record they haven't read yet. And the day they finally face it is the day their confidence turns into a very long drive home. So let me ask you this. When someone uses legal pressure and official language to take something they were never entitled to, is that just a neighborhood dispute? Or is it something closer to theft? Just dressed up in paperwork? And if you've ever had someone try to use authority they didn't have against something you built, inherited, or fought to keep, tell me your story. I want to hear it.